So let's dive into them one by one. The first one is the primal brain. The primal brain is something very, very interesting, and it's the cause of a lot of your cravings, and especially if you're binge eating. If you're finding yourself sometimes being theoretically full, you just finished your meal, but you still want to continue eating, well, that's the primal brain kicking in. And there is a specific way to handle it, and it's nothing like any other strategy, okay? So I will show you a book first of all. Before I take the credits for myself, I gotta tell you, I took it all from this book. This book changed my life. I used to have a binge eating problem, which I didn't even know I have. It's been going on for a few years, and in about 2018 or 2019 is when I realized somebody told me that this is how it goes and I'm probably having a problem. And I was like, fuck, I have a serious problem here and I have to handle it. And I did all the research online, and yes, it existed. Other people were having this problem, and it was called binge eating disorder. It's a very bad disorder. So to explain how it looked like, practically every night I was going to the shop, starving, craving massively sugary stuff. I was walking into the shop and identifying what are the sweetest and the most brutally sweet and caloric treats that I can have, and I was getting bags of them, like one of this and one of this and one of this, and just a chocolate milk as well, just in case. And it was a total amount of about 20 British pounds back every night when I was going to the shop. It was brutal. On the next day, I felt super guilty because I ate it all. This is not for a few days. I ate it all, like in half an hour or 1 hour, watching movies. Then I started feeling miserable. On next day, starving myself, fasting, aiming to burn all the calories. And then in the night, or maybe the next night, I do exactly the same. And that, believe me, destroyed me in a very brutal way, because I wanted to be something better. Maybe you are in this situation too, and you definitely recognize what I'm saying. I wanted to be confident in my skin. I wanted to go amongst people where there's a lot of treats and not want to eat everything and just think about that. I was literally thinking about everything that was on the table, but not enjoying the conversation with people. And also when I go to the gym and train, or in the park with the guys for the calisthenics, I go to do pull-ups and my performance was very bad because my eating was like shit. So it was a massive problem. And then one video on YouTube just showed me that book, and the guy there said that book helped me, saved me, helped me overcome it. It's nothing like what you've seen in other places, so go have a listen or read it. And I did, and it really changed everything for me. This book made me stop binge eating the moment I read it. Like the moment I reached like the pivotal point in the book, which I will highlight now in this podcast episode, my binge eating problems stopped. So the problem usually with binge eating and the traditional conventional methodologies for handling is that it's not very obvious what's causing the issue, and it's really the primal brain. But most traditional methods for treating these binge eating disorders and other like bulimia and anorexia is identifying triggers that are causing that behavior, dealing with every single trigger, and then finding the next one until you eventually run out of triggers. But the problem is that the actual signals for this behavior don't come from the triggers, and they're not habitual. They come from the primal brain, which is not associated with any particular habit. And the method that they use is for handling habits and overcoming some habitual behaviors. But this is not a habitual behavior. This is a brain issue. It's the way your primal brain is wired. So what is the primal brain? The primal brain is the brain that is responsible for fight or flight thoughts and signals. And that primal brain, the good part is, highlight that and remember, it cannot make you take action. A primal brain is in the middle of the brain, and then on top we have the frontal cortex and all other parts of the brain. I'm not a brain expert, but the frontal cortex is what is responsible for our decision making. The primal brain is not responsible for decisions, but just for signals. And they can be very loud and very clear. And the signals will be the sort of related to the topic today, like I have to eat, I want to eat. And they will be the equivalent of if you don't eat, you're gonna die. And they're very, very strong. And they stay there. As long as you recognize them and as long as they exist in your brain, they stay there and they become louder and louder and louder. And it's designed in such a way that it's just so loud that your frontal cortex can't reason with it and eventually gives up. It sounds like a battle which you can never win, and it actually is. This is truly a battle that you can't win in your brain. If you start arguing with your primal brain and saying, no, I just ate and I don't need to eat that, it's gonna keep finding other reasons and you will be stuck in this cycle in your mind. It can go for hours and eventually will make you eat the thing that you know you don't want to eat and you should not be eating. And theoretically, you should have no need to eat, but the bloody thing makes you want to eat it all. So, how do we defeat the signals that come from our primal brain responsible for a lot of your cravings, a lot of your binge eating problems, the times when you know that you are fed, you don't need any more food, but you still want to continue eating? It's by ignoring it. The primal brain sends signal to the frontal cortex, which then has to make the decision to open the fridge, to pick up the fork, to put the food in your mouth, to chew it up, and to swallow. The primal brain only tells the frontal cortex what to do. But here is the caveat. If you ignore these signals and if you start observing your cravings, your hunger signals as something that is like out of you, like a third person thing, identifying it as a primal brain signal is going to help you. Imagine it's a third person, it's something outside of you which you can then decide to ignore. And here is what happens. This signal is based on the fact that the primal brain believes you're gonna die if you don't eat. Well, if you don't eat and you don't die, then it's going to start getting convinced that this is not really true. The way this behavior became apparent in the first place is when you were just, without any thought, just feeding yourself and binge eating without really putting much thought into it, and just practicing this for either cultural reason or because your mom told you to do that and you didn't even put any thought into it. Eventually, when you do this consistently, the brain realizes that this is very important for you. So now it's like giving you this signal all the time. So what you can do is just ignore that signal and live through it, observe it as a third person, and you will see that within 15 minutes and 30 minutes, eventually it's going to fade away. But it can't make you pick the fork. The first moment I did that, it was actually funny and I started laughing. I was like, I actually don't really need to pick anything. That signal just stays there. It's like you're bitten from a mosquito and something you feel there, but you don't need to act on it. It's a very similar thing. So that's the strategy that you need to do when you feel you're having these signals. And it's good to remember because sometimes you can't recognize, is that your primal brain? Is it a habit? Is it just a dopamine craving? Just try not to argue with these signals for the cravings that you're having. It could be sugary cravings or any other food cravings, right? Mostly, keep in mind, mostly the primal brain signals come not just for sugary, but for random, all sorts of caloric food cravings, right? So just ignore them and observe them and don't take action on it. And this can solve a massive problem for you. And again, the book Brain Over Binge by Katrin Hansen, you maybe will be able to find it on Audible, I'm not sure. Have a look or get the paper version. You're not gonna regret it. This book can help you overcome binge eating, bulimia, anorexia, alcoholism, and maybe other sorts of addictions. So it's definitely worth the read. The next culprit that we have is the dopamine addictions. The dopamine addictions are the most common ones that we do to ourselves, especially if we have a sad life or a highly stressful life or a sedentary lifestyle or a boring lifestyle.